Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning. It's a live edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the International Diamond Center studios. We got a good show lined up today. We're going to have Brent Beaird, a college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter. He'll tell us what's going on in the world of college football, and also have Mike Morgan from the SEC Network talk about SEC basketball. If you missed it last night, boy, Missouri put it on Alabama. I'm assuming, I didn't even see if Auburn won or not. I'm assuming they did. But yes, Auburn did win. It was a low scoring game for them. Let's go to the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Tent. We're joined by, as I said, our college football analyst, and he's already trying to figure out who's going to vote for the Heisman next year. Brent Beaird. Good morning, Brent. How you doing?
Hey, Shane. Good to be on with you. It is. I'm glad we had the rain. And hopefully it took care of some of the pollen at this point. But yes, it normally there wouldn't be anything going on, but the meetings this week. With the Big Ten and the SEC and athletic directors have really attracted all the attention of just about anything else going on.
Yes, for sure. Before we jump into it, Marshall on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing, says, Shane, have you ever played golf with Billy Horschel or other tour pros, and did the competition elevate your game? Yes, I play with Billy. I play with many guys that played golf here. My first game round of golf that I really played like legitimate was when I was a freshman, true freshman. I really didn't have a set of clubs, but my dad bought me he gave me money. I went to Walmart and bought a set of Wilson K28s here in Gainesville. And I walked out to the golf course and I ended up walking 18 holes with Dudley Hart and Chris DeMarco. First time I ever really played golf, shot like 84, and I've been hooked ever since. But yeah, Billy's a very good player. I wouldn't say they elevate your game when you play with those guys. It depends on what kind of game you got. We do play for a little bit of money here or there, so that obviously makes you focus a little bit more. All right, Brent. Sorry, I went off on our golf tangent there. Yeah, so Cliff Notes version. What the hell's going on?
Yeah. This week, the SEC and the Big Ten have met, and they are focused on probably more 2026 and beyond than 2025. If folks haven't heard about this, basically the contract for the playoffs is up to date for obviously last year and this year. Now, will there be any changes for this year? Probably very few, because in order to have changes, you have to have a unanimous vote, and that probably is not going to happen. What they're looking at now is in 2026. So here are the big things involved with this. One would be the playoffs are going from 12 to 14 or 16. Kind of what we've heard and read is maybe more 14 at this point, but the 16 is still a possibility. For our listeners, not only would it go to 14, but the SEC and the Big Ten, what they want out of this is they want to have 4 automatic qualifiers, 4 SEC teams minimum to go in every year for both of those conferences. Now, what is also happening with this is the thing that we've talked about for years may actually be going to happen. And that would mean if the SEC gets what they want and having 4 teams minimum, that would mean they would likely go to a 9th SEC game. And for the first time in years, this might actually happen. What that also means, if they go to a 9th game, is you may have some games between the Big Ten and the SEC that would replace some of these, for lack of a better word, cash for clunker games that the fans don't like. So those are probably the Cliff Notes version, some of what we're talking about here. Another biggie is they want to do something with championship weekend. Championship weekend right now is good and bad. They get a lot of money out of the game in Atlanta, but I mean, Georgia, Texas were playing, and both of them are going to the playoffs anyway. What they're looking at now is a possibility of maybe having on the championship weekend, having 3 or 4 playoff games, for lack of a better word, play-in games is what I want to say. Don't know quite where that's going. So, without making this too complicated, Shane, that's kind of the biggies that are coming out of this, and it's not going to happen overnight, but people need to be aware. The College Football Playoff Management Committee, which is 10 conference commissioners and the Notre Dame athletic director, are meeting next week in Dallas, where we very well may have a lot more to go on with what's going to happen in the future. So, in other words, again, 2025, this year, there will probably be minimal changes. I may try to do something with the seedings, but 2026 is when we're actually going to be expanding and maybe start the conversation with 9 SEC games. But look, the bottom line here is the Big Ten and the SEC are flexing their muscles because they can do that. And what they want will determine where we're going over the next few years.
Yeah, so I guess the biggest thing I care about right now, Brent, because there's so much up in the air. You just said it, and I was busy texting looking at the text line. There's no chance we play 9 games next year, right? It would be the following year, possibly 9 SEC games.
Yeah, well, and we don't know when that would be, and how long a process that would take, because if you're doing 9 SEC games, it would probably take a while to do the scheduling. But when I hear people say that it takes years to do the schedules, I also remember back in 2020, the COVID year, we came up with a total 10-game SEC schedule in about a week. Mm-hmm. So, but to your point, no, this year's schedule is already set in stone. But anything beyond, and frankly, anything beyond that, Shane, right now is a question mark.
Do you like what they're proposing, Brent, at all?
Well, I mean, it certainly is. I guess I have mixed emotions about it. I mean, I do like the thing expanding. There's nothing wrong with that. And I won't be surprised if it goes to 16, if that happens. Now, what we're hearing is, and what has been written is, the format would be 4-4, 2-2, 1+1, and I'll explain that. Obviously, 4-4 would be the SEC and the Big Ten. 2-2 would be the ACC and the Big 12. 1 would be the non-power 4. And the +1, and they're going to reserve this, would be for Notre Dame. So that is your format as a possibility of where they may go with all of this too. And as you can imagine, the money would be unbelievable with all of this. But again, obviously the SEC wanted 4 teams last year. They didn't get that. So they don't want that to happen again. And this is kind of where they're going. They didn't like the fact of where you had Boise State as high as they were in the rankings. So I mean, Boise State was the 3rd seed. I'm trying not to get too lost in the weeds here for listeners, but that in a nutshell, that's kind of where we are. I mean, they've been meeting about this, I think, virtually for probably a while. And people may be saying, well, why do they need to decide this now? Well, it's like everything else. You've got to start the ball rolling. It takes a while to officially get things done. So those are among the reasons that they've got to get it done now. Obviously, television is involved behind the scenes with ESPN and Fox. So they've got to deal with that too, and that takes a while. So, I've got mixed emotions about it. I think there's some good things about it. I mean, for fans who are buying tickets to have an additional SEC game instead of playing the Sisters of the Poor, I'm sure they would like that. And then to maybe be playing, and I'm not saying Ohio State and Alabama would be playing every year, but if they come up with this schedule agreement with the Big Ten and the SEC, that is, that would bring some more attractive games to what's going on. And I still think, Shane, that underneath all this stuff, within probably 5 years or so, the SEC is going to expand again and bring in their big target right now is North Carolina.
Right.
And another one they would bring in would be probably Duke, Virginia, someone of that ilk from the ACC. People may be wondering, why in the world would you bring in North Carolina? Well, there are a lot of reasons to do that beyond just football. It would be basketball. It would also be that they have this elite academic status that a lot of the Big Ten schools have, and your chancellors and your presidents of the SEC still have to sign off on everything, and bringing in a couple of schools like we just mentioned would make them very happy.
Yeah, I remember I may have said it on this show when I was up for that SEC Legends thing at the championship game 2 years ago.
Yes.
We had a sit-down luncheon with Greg Sankey where you could ask questions, and somebody asked about expansion. He said the 2 teams that they would target would be North Carolina and Virginia.
Yeah.
All right, Brent, this is quite interesting here. The average number of returning starters in college football per season, per team since 2015 is kind of shocking here.
Yeah, it really is. This is the time of year where we get things like this because things slow down a little bit. Okay, 2015 there were 13.3 starters returning. I won't go through all of them, but in 2020 there were 13. Then in 2021 there were 16.2. That involved your super seniors COVID thing. And 2025 2024, 11.5, and there's an estimate for 2025 of 9.3. So, Shane, what does that tell you after reading those numbers? there are fewer returning starters for every team over the last few years. And I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for that, but no doubt the portal has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah, for sure. The Pouncey twins, Mike and Marquise, invite you to try the mango martinis at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, handcrafted with their J.F. Hayden liqueurs. Try those flavors and find your favorite at shopjfhaydens.com. We got Brent Beaird here, our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter on the Titan MR hotline. All right, Brent, let's go around the league. What's going on in Tuscaloosa other than getting their butts beat in basketball last night? What's going on in football?
Yeah. They've lost it 2 in a row. A lot of that's because they're getting behind 9-0 and 12-0, and they're not playing good defense. So, and by the way, they play Kentucky Saturday. Kayla DeBoer's added Tyler Hughes. He was with the Patriots as an analyst. My understanding is Hughes was with DeBoer in Washington when he was there. I have heard that their practices, or at least their off-season workouts, are a lot more intense. They're not able to, and it's kind of little things, and that they're not able to wear jewelry during their team sessions and things of that nature. And and I don't know a lot about this. I just heard about it yesterday, but there's some kind of for lack of a better word, a documentary on Alabama that I think is even going to be on Fox. Some folks may have heard more about that, but that's kind of coming up too. And like everybody else, Alabama will be in spring practice in probably about 3 weeks.
Yeah, something like that. Barone71 has a question for you, Brent. This is brought to you by Quality Plumbing. What's the minimum DeBoer needs to do in year 2 to appease the Bama fans?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they were 9-3 last year, on the verge of getting in the playoffs with really poor quarterback play and a suspect offensive line. I would say probably. I mean, this is a pretty good team coming back, particularly on defense. They've got to shore up their offensive line. Whoever plays quarterback will be more consistent. So, I mean, they're certainly capable of 9-3, 10-2. Which, I mean, if they're 10-2, that would get them in the playoffs likely. So, I mean, he's under no danger of being fired, but it would be really interesting to see what Grubb, their new offensive coordinator, who was there before, Ryan Grubb, is able to do. And they've got a lot of talent on offense, and they can fix the offensive line.
Yeah. Arkansas, they lost a ton of their receivers, which surprises me because Bobby Petrino throws it around. Look, I don't know who they lost, but I would want to go play for Bobby Petrino. Did they bring in some good players?
Oh, yeah. Well, and their quarterback comes back. Do you remember the Taylor Green kid, Shane?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And he's back. Now, look, he's not great. He can be inconsistent, but he can also make a big play right after he does something that is inconsistent. Yes, they've got 6 receivers coming back from last year. Now they've got some guys, Jordan Anthony, Bryce Stevens, Shamar Easter, C.J. Brown, that they think they can depend on. Anthony is a junior, Stevens is a senior. So I know a lot of those names probably aren't familiar, but good point with that. They should be with Green coming back. They should be okay offensively next year.
Yeah, for sure. All right, the Gators. What's going on in Gainesville?
Lagway has made the announcement about his partnership with UF Health. Frankly, to me, if you're for NIL, this is the reason you get NIL, is to do things like this that ends up helping people in the community. So good for him to be able to do so. this is a little thing, but yet it's not. Texas is moved their home game versus Sam Houston for the upcoming season. They will have a week off before playing Florida. And my understanding is Florida this year, I think either has very few or no other teams that would be playing a game before they play them. So that's something to. I mean, look, and this happens. These are schedule quirks. Every year, some team in the SEC is going to say, "Well, we've got 4 or 5 teams that have a week off before they play us." So I get the consternation about that. So, but unfortunately, that happens sometimes in the schedule too. So, and Asa Turner has had surgery, trying to get his 7th year of football. You probably know more, and we haven't talked about that this week too. So, kind of a mixed bag for the Gators this week.
Yeah, sure. Tom says on the Titan MR text line, I miss Wimp Sanderson.
Yeah. Wimp was tremendous. I remember he had there were 3 years in a row they went to the Sweet 16, but that's when he had Trail Sprewell and guys like that, and Robert Ory, but back during that time.
What's going on with the Georgia Bulldogs?
They have got a kid named Talon Taylor, who's a wide receiver that they are really excited about. He's a 5-star prospect. Now, this is something I really need to go back and check, but I mean, I still give the sources at Georgia who did this credit for it. The last time Georgia signed a 5-star receiver was back in 2019 with George Pickens. So, but we'll also say, Shane and I talked a lot during the season about how many passes the Georgia wide receivers dropped during the season. So I'm guessing, Shane, that they will work on that pretty frequently during the spring.
Yeah, they definitely will. It was truly amazing what a good squad they had and how poor they caught the football at the wide receiver position. It was just amazing to me. Real quick, Auburn. Mark's question for you on Auburn. I kind of skipped over them on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. Do or die for Hugh Freeze next year? Will Auburn be quick to pull the plug?
Yes. I mean, I've heard that. And even Freeze knows how important this year is. Jackson Arnold is our quarterback from Oklahoma. And they've got 2 tackles that needed desperately on the offensive line. They start with Baylor, which would be interesting. But yes, I do. Now I think they'll be better. Okay, but the reality is, if they post a 5-7 or 6-6, I would say there's going to be a real reality that he may be gone, because they would not, and they shouldn't, frankly. They've been very mediocre as of late, and they need to change that.
Yeah. Brent, I've had different people on my show the last couple of weeks. We talk a little bit of college football, not a whole lot right now, but some of them think this is a huge year for Brian Kelly. Would you agree with that? They won 9 games last year, but they've kind of not been in the hunt, right, for the SEC.
Yeah, that's right.
How important is this year for Brian Kelly at LSU?
Well, I think it's important, and I'm not necessarily saying 8-4 would get him fired, but they need to play better. And they've got guys like Harold Perkins coming back, and he's going to play the star position. And obviously, I think their offense will be good. I think their defense will be better because their defensive coaches are really good. Blake Baker came over from Missouri. Bo Davis is their defensive line coach, too. They need to be able to run the ball better. Caden Durham comes back, so that will help them. Here's an oddity about LSU. LSU goes to Clemson to start the season. LSU's lost like 5 straight opening games. Now, they played FSU, they played Southern Cal, they'll be playing Clemson. But but here's the point: they've really got good players, and at some point they've got to play and be in championships. And right now they're just not.
Yeah. Brent, you got any news out of the Tennessee Vols? Obviously, they made the playoffs last year. It's been kind of quiet, it seems like, coming out of Knoxville.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The offensive line is going to have to be rebuilt. They had 4 starters who were seniors, 2 top reserves too. So they're trying to concentrate on that. They've lost 143 career starts, so I think that's going to be very important for them. They've had Lance Hurd is one of their transfers. Also, so I think that's going to be key for them. Another key for them is, and Shane, I'm sure you noticed this, is Nico Lamaliva is going to get better too. I mean, he's a young quarterback. They expect a lot of tremendous potential out of him, but it just hasn't clicked yet. I mean, you saw him in action, obviously, and followed what he did. So him getting better is going to be key for them next season.
Yeah, Barone says on YouTube, brought by Claudia Plumman, the Tigers of Death Valley versus the Tigers of Death Valley.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe the one in Baton Rouge is a little bit different than the playing atmosphere in Clemson. They're both outstanding. Give us some news and notes on the semis and the Hurricanes.
Yeah, be glad to. Charles Lester, their freshman quarterback, was arrested in Manatee County this previous Monday. He had a DUI. Not a whole lot is available with that. He's 6'1", in 210, so they'll be going through the legal procedure for that. The Miami situation, Will Harris was there for maybe a cup of coffee, and the report is said that he is coming to Jacksonville to be with the Jaguars. So that is going on. Obviously, Carson Beck is going to be your quarterback in Miami. Help me on this, Shane, as far as how they deal with this. My understanding is Beck is going to start, I think they call it light throwing, I believe in May, and just progressively be able to do more and more as it goes along. So that's a little bit of the timetable on Beck, who obviously had surgery a few months ago.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. I've never had any kind of arm surgeries or anything, so I don't really know a whole lot about the rehab, but
right.
They're rolling the dice. Something could easily have gone wrong, and he may not heal as quickly as they thought. So we'll have to wait and see. Brent, good stuff as always. Appreciate your time, and sorry about your Crimson Tide last night, but it's just one game in basketball. I tell you what, the Missouri Tigers are just
really good.
They're playing as well as anybody in the league, quite honestly.
Yeah, and I can tell you this for Gator fans listening, and we cover basketball closely, and I know you've talked about this, but this Gator team is really, really good. Mm-hmm. They're national championship good. I mean, if you can beat Auburn, frankly, and they did it with their bigs, and this may be the best guard situation of anybody in the SEC that the Gators have. If Gator fans aren't excited about this team, they need to get excited because they are that good.
Yes, they are. Andy says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon, WWE's Mark Henry's son is playing for Oklahoma. I didn't know Andy was a big wrestling fan. I have no idea. I have no idea who Mark Henry is in wrestling. So, I remember Andre the Giant and the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
All right, Brent. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next week, bud.
Good, bud. Take care. Thank you.
That's Brent Beaird. Join us on the Tight Number Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Sim. Take a quick time out. Come back. Talk a little SEC basketball with the SEC Network's Mike Morgan. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the International Diamond Center Studios. We'll be right back.
Our premium sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union,
International Diamond Center,
Meldon Law, QC Kinetics, Dave & Buster's, UF Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, JF Hayden Craft Liqueurs, Florida Cracker Kitchen, Los Linderos Tequila. Gridiron sponsors are Baker Sporting Goods, Comfort Temp, Electronics World, Florida Victorious, Gallo Car Wash, Miapa Latin Cafe, Peachland Dental, Quality Plumbing, Ruse Ogre State Farm, Silverback Concrete, 84 Lumber, Big Mills Cheesesteak, Celebrate Primary Care, Dowling Signs, Gator Bait Media, Gator Dominoes, Ironwood Golf Course, Okido America, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, UF Books.
10-year-old uncut Elijah Craig single barrel. Only bottled at 121.1 proof. Enjoy indulgent bourbon-inspired bites. Served in a casual mingle-style setting with a Spurrier's twist. Your ticket includes one exclusive bottle of Spurrier's Elijah Craig single barrel. Signed by Steve Spurrier himself.
It's going to be a great night. Get your tickets at spurriers.com.
I'm tired of you living in pain, and I want you to get real lasting relief from chronic pain in your knees, back, shoulders, and hips. QC Kinetics can get you moving again with cutting-edge regenerative treatments with no drugs, no downtime, and no surgery. Stop putting it off. Call now and schedule your free consultation. Call QC Kinetics now in Gainesville, Ocala, and the Villages. 352-400-4550. 352-400-4550.
Unleash the Inferno.
The most important thing I learned from my father was work ethic and integrity. Never veer away from integrity, even if it costs you money.
International Diamond Center owner Keith LeClaire.
The core value for IDC is to protect the customer.
That means offering the largest selection, uncompromising quality, the strongest warranties, and honest guidance from experts who are not paid on commission. International Diamond Center at Celebration Point. Online, shopidc.com.
Welcome back to the International Diamond Center Studios. There are many car washes in Gainesville, but only one Gallo Car Wash, locally owned by UF alum and the only car wash that provides NIL opportunities to Gator athletes, with locations on Northwest 13th Street, Southwest Williston Road, and coming soon to Jonesville. Back to the Titan Number Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp, our good friend of the program from the SEC Network, Mike Morgan. Good morning, Mike. How you doing, bud?
Shane, PodUp Nation, doing well. Always good to check in. Hope everybody is enjoying semi-warm weather, depending on where you are. If you're in Florida, for the rest of us, it's just freeze your ass off just about anywhere in the country.
Yeah, good thing you're not up in North Dakota or South Dakota. It's like minus 40 degrees. It's crazy.
I wouldn't survive it, Shane. You know that.
Well, I don't think anybody's supposed to go outside in that. Stay indoors. All right, Mike, let's start with basketball. My goodness, the Gators just continue to roll. I'm on record on this program the last week or two. Actually, I go back. I'm going to tell this to you because you don't watch our show every day, but before kickoff in the press box, before the Gasparilla Bowl against Tulane, I'm up there with Chris Harry and some of the old guys that cover the Gators. And Chris, he is the main beat writer for FloridaGators.com with the Gator basketball team. Goes to every practice, everything. I said, Chris, this team's better than the championship teams, in my opinion. I said, they may not win it, but I think they're more athletic. They score better. He laughed at me. He still laughed at me the other day when I had him on. because what I tried to explain is I look at the picture. I know what they did. There's nothing you can do about that. But at that point, you didn't know what that team was going to do. We don't know what this team's going to do. They may not even make it to the Final Four. I still think they're better. Just give me your thoughts on how good this basketball team really is. You've seen a lot of them.
I've had them a lot, and I was certainly in on them early. There's two teams I was on early that I don't think many people were, that now everybody's on them. One is Florida, for many of the reasons you just mentioned, and we can kind of have some fun with that debate in a second. And the other one is Missouri, the team that beat Florida in Gainesville, and I had that game. And a lot of people were like, wow, Florida must have had an off night. I said, no, Missouri's just damn good, and they are. They showed it again yesterday against Alabama. They put up 108 points on them, for crying out loud. Yeah. Mitchell did what Mitchell does, which was dominate. That's one of the big gets in the portal. Missouri's got a lot of NIL money for basketball, by the way. I think some people will be surprised by that. And Caleb Grill did what he did in Gainesville, which is just shoot lights out. I think he had 25 points and 10 rebounds. That dude is a flat-out player. But those are the two teams. Like, everybody was high on Auburn, Alabama at the beginning of the year. And then, Kentucky had their run. They kind of cooled off a bit, although they beat Vandy last night. Some people have been high on A&M. They're familiar with Buzz and so on and so forth. The Mississippi schools have both been good. But for basically about a month and a half, for my money, the three best teams have been Auburn, Alabama, Florida. And I'm going to start adding Missouri to that list. They might be a little bit below, but not much, in terms of teams that I really think have Final Four DNA. I'm not saying that none of the other teams have a chance. I'm just telling you those are the teams that had the best crack at it, that had the best chance of getting there overall. And in the case of Florida specifically, they just do everything well. They just the fact that they've been able to win games in the manner that they have with all the injuries. I mean, when your starting two guard is out and you're winning games and blowing the doors off people, and then you lose, your best rim protector and one of the best rebounders in the country, and you're still winning games. Because, again, Houck is not your typical guy off the bench. And obviously Aberdeen would start for about 350 schools in the country. So that's what makes Florida extremely unique. Now look, I saw that 06-07 team in person like you did. That was back in my radio days. We can debate who was more athletic or who was, but those two teams were, especially the second year. Now, people will forget the first year, they lost their fair share of games. They didn't dominate the SEC by any stretch.
Right.
It was almost flukish the way they went to the Final Four and won it all. A lot of things had to happen. Joakim Noah, who was kind of a project in a lot of ways, all of a sudden became this elite rim protecting, rebounding, shot in the paint guy that nobody saw before that. Lee Humphrey became this incredible 3-point demon who was under-recruited out of Tennessee, and Al Horford just became the perfect glue guy and the guy that could do anything for you. We could debate who was more athletic, but that team in 07, the second year, that's the best team Florida's ever had. And nothing to me is going to come close until we see it happen. That's one of the best SEC teams I've ever covered or ever seen, period. They had an answer for everything. They had guys like Richard off the bench. Like they were just, everything about that team was so elite. And then you had a Hall of Famer coaching them in Billy Donovan. So I could see where people are going to get a little bit protective, Shane, of the 06-07 teams because they were special. But to your point, this team has a chance to be special. They really do. Now they just have to show that they can do it in the tournament. Last year, defensively, they weren't good enough. You can't give up 100 points in a March Madness game and go very far. This year, that should not happen. They should go deep. And if they do, well, now we'll take the lid off that conversation and we'll really say, that Shane Matthews, in addition to being a football savant, he saw something nobody else saw with Gator basketball in 2025.
Well, here's what I like to say is it's easy for us to talk about what Al Horford and Joe Kim because they went on and played in the NBA. I don't know if any of these guys are playing in the NBA. I'm going to, my personal opinion, I love Lee Humphrey and I love Torian Green. I would take this backcourt right here way before them, personally. I think they're better.
Well, I love me some Walter Clayton now, and there's no question. And he has turned into an outstanding player, much like I was talking about with some of those players in 06-07. Remember now, Brewer was the only McDonald's All-American. A lot of those guys were flying under the radar, and with the help of Billy Donovan and some kids are just late bloomers, they turned into elite guys. When I first saw Al Horford and Joakim Noah, did I think that they were going to be in the NBA and lottery picks? Hell no. Did I think Al Horford was going to be would be like the Methuselah of NBA basketball and playing damn near 40 years of age? Hell no. I didn't see all that, but they morphed into that. And maybe, like, I see Alex Condon. Alex Condon could be a first-round draft pick, folks. And I've been talking about that for a month because the NBA scouts I talk to, when they look at the upside of that kid, it's there. So enjoy him while he's there, because even in an NIL era, if they tell you you're a first-rounder, you're likely gone. Houck has turned into a very under-recruited, undervalued player that's sneaky athletic and an absolute pain in the ass to guard and rebound and try and box out. So a lot of these guys are getting better on the fly. Walter Clayton last year was good and then not so good. And a lot of people had questions whether or not he could play the point guard, because he's entirely different than what Florida had last year in Pullman. But what favors him, and I remember talking to Todd Golden about this all the way back in November, December, is that the Gators are far more up-tempo this year than they were last year. And when you're far more up-tempo, it's less about who is a quote-unquote true point guard. It's more about just pushing it up the floor. If you've got numbers in transition, get a quick bucket. If you don't, pass it off, and then run your offense in the half court. But the point guard position has changed a lot. He doesn't have to play an old school point guard spot the way Pullen did a year ago. And I absolutely think he can make it in the NBA. He's got to be undersized, and some people will say, well, does he really fit the mold? I don't know, and I don't care. Today's NBA favors a kid like Walter Clayton, who's an unbelievable athlete, but now he's showing he's got the jump shot and the range and the feel for the game as well.
Yeah. All right. I'm getting millions of texts here, and people are blowing.
Let me tell you something. Look, anybody over the age of 35, Shane, you're going to rattle some cages with that statement, but that's okay. That's part of the fun.
Look, here's the thing. Look, I've always said what Billy Donovan and the 06, those back-to-back, is the greatest feat of any sporting team at the University of Florida to win that in basketball. The greatest thing ever. But what I'm saying is the best teams don't always win national championships. I today will put the 2001 Steve Spurrier, his last football team, against any team here, and I think it's the best team. They didn't win. I agree. They didn't even win the SEC. So, but
what about 97 Florida? Yeah. What about 97 Florida football? That team certainly was, or I'm with you. 01 Florida football with Rex and those guys set all those offensive records. Yeah. If 9/11 doesn't happen, if you play Tennessee, we can play this game all day long. I think you're right on 2001 Florida. I mean, hell, the 95 team was damn good. Right. They ran into a freight train in Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl, but what did that team lack that the 96 team? I guess Bob Stoops will be the answer to that, right?
Yeah, and it's all about timing, and like I said, the best teams don't always win. That's where I'm going with this, and I'm just going by my opinion and what my eyes tell me. All right, so we got a question here on Facebook Live brought to you by Mellon Law from AC. Says, Mike, where would a number one seed like Florida be playing in their first round if they were to do really well in the SEC tournament? I guess he says that Atlanta, Tampa, and Orlando are hosting.
Yeah, so I know we have one of those in Atlanta. I got to be honest with you. I haven't figured out the geography of this that much, because what is it? The last number one seed has to go out west. So like some people have posed the question, would you rather be a 2 seed and play close to home, play close to Florida, or would you rather be a 1 seed and play out west? I got to be honest with you. I'd rather play close to home, because Florida's a national brand with alums all over the place. But we do know if you get to play in the Southeast, the Florida faithful will be there, and they will help pack up, and they will gobble up a lot of those tickets, and it can be a factor. If you go back to South Carolina's run in 2017, that whole bathroom bill thing stopped the tournament from being in Raleigh-Durham, I believe it was going to be, or Greensboro. So it was going to be like a home game for Duke, but instead they moved it because of the bathroom bill. because apparently the NCAA likes to get into politics when it fits them. And so South Carolina wound up playing like a home game in Greenville, and their crowd was like a home game, and that helped them win a couple games. So I would almost rather be a 2 seed with a better crowd by my side than a 1 seed and have to travel 3,000 miles in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Riz-Ogre State Farm Office is the team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 352-240-1779. A few more minutes with Mike Morgan from the SEC Network on the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. On the Titan MR text line, Tommy asks, Mike, who has been your surprise team in the SEC? Got to be Missouri.
Well,
right?
I'll start with Missouri. Now, again, since I saw them in person doing what they did in the O-Dome, they haven't been a surprise to me. But anytime you go 0-19 and now all of a sudden you're playing like a top 10 team, that's a surprise. But again, that's the power of the portal. That's how quickly this thing can turn around. I think if Vanderbilt gets in, and I think they will, that's the biggest surprise. I didn't think Vanderbilt had a shot in hell of being an NCAA tournament team because new coach, entirely new roster, and some of those guys, quite frankly, are mid-major talented guys. Hogarth's a transfer from Michigan State. That's a big one. And believe it or not, Vandy's got NIL money too when it comes to basketball. So they went out and they made the right additions. Their coach Byington said, when I got the job, remember he coached JMU to an upset in the big dance last year. So he gets the job. Now he's got to flip over an entire roster. It's like speed dating, he said. You just start making phone calls and like, okay, you want to come to Vandy? You want to come to Vandy? What's the price tag? Yeah. How about you? How about you? And they're probably going to be in the tournament. They're probably going to be, one of those teams that's like 11 or 12 out of the SEC. So I think that's the biggest one.
Andy's question, I'll answer and then let you answer it on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law. He says, did you see anything at LSU last night that should concern the Gator fans this Saturday? I will tell you no, unless we fall asleep in Pete Maravich Assembly Center.
Yeah, well,
they got one good player, in
no.
my opinion, number 5. I don't even know what his name is.
Cam Carter, and he's legit. Like
he's very good.
Yeah, Cam Carter can score for anybody, anywhere, anytime. And they are playing better. And it is one of those trap games, like because it's not going to be a great crowd there, and LSU is near the bottom. But no, when Florida plays their game, there's not many teams that are going to beat them the rest of the way in the SEC, and for that matter, in the NCAA tournament. Now that's a big if, right? They're not always going to have their A game. There are going to be days where you don't shoot the 3 well or do this or that well. The thing I keep coming back to with Florida and why I like the team so much is I just don't see a weakness. You can be a really good team and have an off night, but I don't see a weakness on this team where if I'm scouting, I always think of like, okay, if I was an opposing coach and I'm scouting against Todd Golden's squad, what do I attack? Well, hell, they do everything well, and they don't rely on one player. It's a number of guys. Obviously, it all starts with Clayton, but if Clayton has a 6 for 23 night from the field, which is rare, they still have other guys that can make shots and make plays. So I just think Florida, they're not going to run the table. The SEC tournament's a crapshoot. They're going to pick up another loss at some point, but they are still going to be very difficult to beat. And I don't see them losing to inferior competition. I just don't think they're wired that way.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears before we get you out of here. You wanted to mention what Ross Dellinger, his article that he wrote about the college football playoffs.
Well, I just think it's interesting, Shane, because I warned people, or I warned fans of other leagues that the SEC didn't get that 4th bid this year. We talked about this on JC and Morgan, that from people I talked to in the know, Greg Sankey and the Big Ten, they were going to go nuclear and basically say, you forgot who's in charge. We will demand more automatic qualifiers. So if you read the article, the SEC and Big Ten are going to get 4. So what does that mean for a team like Florida? Well, if Florida went 9-3 last year, and you weren't that far off, even after another shaky start and coach on the hot seat and blah blah blah, and then before you know it, you win 8 games and you're actually having a respectable year. A 9-win team last year likely would get in, because that'd be one of the 4 automatic bids, and then you still have at-large bids at play. So the SEC and Big Ten, who are meeting in New Orleans right now, they're basically saying, okay, we've tried your cute little format with 13 guys, Ward Manuel and another dozen folks sitting in a recliner with a Perrier and taking no notes and spitting out teams based on record and record only. Now we're going to do it the real way. The SEC clearly is the most difficult league, clearly has the most difficult schedule. So we're going to take more automatic bids, whether you like it or not. We're going to go to 9 conference games. We're going to play the Big Ten Invitational, if you will. So Florida will play a Big Ten team every year. All this is not just on the table. I think it's headed that way. And so you're about to see a drastic change in the way the postseason is conducted and what teams get to participate. And I think for a team like Florida, obviously, much like many of the SEC teams, that only helps your chances of getting into the playoff every year.
Yeah, well, it should be interesting. It's something's going to change. We just don't know when, and should be a lot of fun. Mike, appreciate your time. You got a little time off this week, and then back into the fold next week, right?
Yeah, then back into it. I do want to mention real quick, you see their logo on the screen every day on this fine program. My man Sean over there at MG&A Wealth, they're based in South Florida. They handle a lot of financial needs for a lot of Gator fans out there and others. Sean's the guy. You can go to mgawealth.com, call the phone number, ask for Sean, tell him you heard about it here on the PodUp extravaganza, and could be one of the most valuable phone calls for you and your family. Most of us don't get that NFL pension, Shane. We gotta be creative. So
that's right.
That's where Sean and MG&A Wealth come in.
Yeah, good stuff as always, buddy. Stay warm, and we'll talk to you soon, my man.
All right, Shane. Always enjoy it. Thank you.
That's Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. Join us on the Titan and More Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. Florida victorious, proud NIL partner of the Florida Gators. Join today to help make Florida victorious. We'll be here tomorrow, folks. Enjoy your day. Take care.